5.1, the worksheet. If you're following in our textbook, page 168 to 174. Today we're going to talk about making a 6-column worksheet. And from this worksheet, we're going to be able to finish our trial balance, our financial statements, which are the balance sheet and the income statement. Okay, so if we were to take a look at where we've gone in the accounting cycle, we started with business transactions. Then we journalized them by putting them into a journal. Then we posted them by putting them into a ledger. And then we did a trial balance and we made some financial statements. At this point, we're going to introduce a worksheet. And a worksheet is just that. It's a place where you are going to put your work for the whole entire month before you actually prepare a formal document, balance sheet, and income statement. Okay, so a worksheet is not something that it's not a formal document, it's not something you would give to somebody, it's just for your own use. Okay, so this is what a worksheet kind of looks like, or it does look like. It's just kind of in a simplified format here. It's called a 6-column because you have 2 columns for your trial balance here. You have 2 columns here for your income statement and 2 columns here for your balance sheet. Now, in the next section, we're going to actually put 2 new columns in here called adjustments. And that's going to be an 8-column worksheet. We never do just a 6-column worksheet, but we're just using it now to introduce the basics of worksheets before we get into something a little more difficult using adjustments. Okay, so this is just kind of to get you started. The basic sections of a worksheet. The basic sections, we have assets, and we're going to list all of our assets here. Now we're going to do our trial balance section first before we worry about anything on our income statement or our balance sheet. Your assets are all debit balances, that's why they are listed here. Then you're going to do your liabilities, and they are credits, that's why they're listed in this column. Then you're going to do your owner's equity, which is also a credit balance. Then you're going to have your revenue, and actually I should say this too. This is going to be your drawings. Then you have your revenue, which is on a credit side, and you have your expenses, which is the debit side. Okay, so then at this point, it's called a trial balance because you want to make sure that your debits equal your credits. Because remember, you've done a whole month's worth of transactions, you've posted them into ledgers, and it's so easy to make a mistake in ledgers. So at this point, you want to make sure that your debits equal your credits. Now, if they do, you're going to transfer your information to the appropriate financial statement. Remember that income statement is your revenue and your expenses. And your balance sheet is your assets, your liabilities, and your owner's equity. Not sure why that's not working. Anyway, you know what I mean. Okay, so assets are normal debit balances, and they go over onto the balance sheet. So you're going to take this whole section, and you are going to move it to the balance sheet debit. Your liabilities are on a balance sheet, so you're taking this whole section and you're going to transfer it over to there. Then you've got your owner's equity and your drawing, so both of those get transferred over. The capital or the owner's equity goes to the credit side, and the owner's drawing goes to the debit side. Now that is it for your balance sheet. At that point, you're done your balance sheet. Now on your owner's or on your income statement, your revenue goes over to the revenue column, and your debits go over to the debit column. At this point, you are also done. Then you're going to total these 2, and you're going to total these 2. And I'm going to talk in a minute about what we're going to do with those totals. We do not expect these totals to be equal. This one and this one shouldn't be equal, and this one and this one should not be equal. If they're equal, it means that your company made no money and they didn't lose any money. Okay, so only the trial balance ones will be equal, the rest will not. Okay, so we want to make sure we have our heading, the who, what, and when. I've talked about what to do on the trial balance as well. Okay, transferring to balance sheet, transferring to income statement sides, talked about that. Now completing the income statement section. Okay, this is the important part that I said I would talk about. You're going to rule a single line below the income statement debit and credit columns, and you're going to add each column. You're going to write the totals below the single underline, and in your textbook, if you want to follow, you can find figure 5.3. The debit total is 8,813, and the credit column total is 16,090. The difference between the two columns, and when you subtract them, is going to be your net income or your net loss. Now in this case, your revenue is higher than your expenses. And you want to write the difference on the smaller side. So if you look, you'll see the 7,277 amount on figure 5.3. The reason why you do that is because you want your final totals to be the same after you put in your net income and net loss. So in this case, it's a net income because your revenue is higher than your expenses. If it was the other way around, it of course would be a net loss. Okay, now if you're going to complete the balance sheet section, it's the same thing. You single underline to show that you're going to be adding. Then you are going to subtract them and make sure you know. And by the way, you have to have the same amount of the net income or net loss on both the income statement and the balance sheet. If you don't, you know you've made a mistake. Okay? Then you're going to single underline to show that you're going to add everything. And then when you're all done, you're going to double underline. And if you want to look on page 171, there is a complete worksheet there that you can go through and have a look at and make sure that you've formatted it properly. Okay, so this is what the bottom part looks like. So these squiggly lines here just show that they haven't shown you everything in between. So this is the final part. The single underline on the trial balance to show you're adding, the double underline to show that it's correct. On the income statement, the single underline to show that you are adding. Then you've totaled these two amounts. You never want them to be the same. The difference is $8,000. And you're going to put it on the smaller side, the smaller number. So that, and then you're going to single underline to show you're adding, because you want these final numbers to be the same. And then you double underline. Okay, same thing with the balance sheet. Single underline to show you're adding. Okay, add your totals. Subtract them now. It's $8,000. Make sure that those two numbers are the same right here. Okay? If they're not, then you know you've made a mistake. Single underline, and then double underline to show that they are equal. And it is important that you put the word here net loss if your expenses were greater than your revenue or your liabilities were greater than your assets. If it would have been a net income, you would have crossed out the word loss and put the word income. Okay, now what you've done is that tells you that everything is in balance and you are ready to make your official income statement and balance sheet. We've already talked about what an income statement looks like, so nothing new there. And we've also talked about a balance sheet that looks like this. So this is kind of the balance sheet that we're going to go towards now instead of the simple left-sided, right-sided one, because we want to make sure that we show our entire owner's equity. Okay, so worksheets might be a little difficult. If you're having trouble, always feel free to email me and I can help you out.